Howdo! Are you sick of your hallway looking a bit like this? Do you think it would be better if it looked a bit more like this? Well then, keep watching. Hi, I'm Chris. Welcome to King Bespoke Creations. Yes, we're going to build a hall tidy type of thing. A seat that you can sit down and put your shoes on, but it lifts up and you can store all of your shoes, umbrellas, scarves, hats, whatever else clutters up the hallway can all just tuck away inside there. This is going to be a very simple design used with whatever wood you have available. So the look of this can actually change depending on what you have. I'm going to build it out of some stud walling timbers and some pallet wood and some bench top that I already have lying around. You might not have that. You might have some spare tongue and groove, or you might have access to some cheap tongue and groove. You might want to use a nice faced sheet of plywood to edge this off to make it look different. So how this is going to go together and what it's going to look like at the end of it is kind of down to you and what you want and what you have. So first thing with this big top is to get rid of all these sections here, so it's just flat from this edge in. Now I don't have a massive table saw in my little workshop, and that isn't going to do the job. So we're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way with some chisels and a plane. Top tip here, anytime you're marking off a cut, always mark with a knife line and then the saw doesn't chip off the edges. And if you want both sides of the wood, do 2 lines and cut down the middle. So that's what the top's going to be, roughly laid out. That little gap in the corner there is going to be for an umbrella stand. So here's the design. I'm sure you've seen it from the thumbnail image, but yeah, you've got the 2 seat tops that we've just cut out, and if you see in the top left hand corner there's a gap there for the umbrella stands to fit as well. So if we take away the pallet wood sides, we'll see that we've got this frame made out of those stud wall timbers. Now we're going to do something relatively simple with those in a way that you've maybe not thought of before. If we remove the tops, we get to see those sections even more. So what we're going to do is create these 3 individual frames: the front frame, the back frame, and this corner little front frame as well. We're then going to connect those 3 square frames up with these side sections. So the frames will be put together with a simple half lap joint. Then we're going to use mortise and tenons to join those 3 up in one block, and that's how we get the frame. Now that might not be the standard way for someone to build a frame, but here's the thing, I'm a self-taught woodworker, so I know quite a few joints. I've learnt them, I've played with them, I've seen what they can do. So it means that I've got things in here that I can twist and adapt to fit my needs. I don't have to use the regulation joint. Now I feel quite passionately about this. Being schooled in something is a brilliant way to learn, but you don't always learn everything there is to know. And you tend to then be fixed on how to do something. So I'm writing a book. It's going to come out just before Christmas. So make sure you subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell, because when it comes out for release, it will be free for a few days. Now I'm going to let everybody know on this YouTube channel when that happens. So make sure you click the subscribe button and get yourself a copy of Be a Self-Taught Woodworker. It will be coming out soon. Right, so now that we've got those top pieces, they're the fixed dimensions really. So once you've got that sorted, then we can go on with making the frames. I'm going to make the back frame first because it's the one great big one, which is 4'6" wide is how I'm going to make this. But don't forget, I'm going to put a face on one end of it because the other end's against the wall of some pallet wood. So it needs to be 4'6" minus this thickness for the entire frame. It's going to be 16 inches tall, less the height of whatever top you're using, the seat topping. So use your dimensions, use what you've got, and make that back frame up. So I'm going to construct these individual frames just using a half lap joint. So literally cutting half off this section, half of that section, gluing them together. We'll come to joining those frames up that way in a bit. Always use the wood itself to measure up. I'm going to use a nick like that because I know that's the right size, and then make sure it's square using your square. And then do the same on this piece as well. So this time making sure it's flush that way on. I'm going to put a nick underneath like that, and then go across square with that one. Grabbing one of these, we can go roughly halfway through, and this is the good thing with using something like this, is it doesn't actually need to be perfectly halfway. We just need to make sure we're measuring from the same side. So I need to go from the top of this piece and the top of this piece, and then that's both getting cut down to exactly the same depth. So now using those marking lines to guide the saw, cutting down to that halfway point, and then my preferred way of getting rid of the waste is just using a chisel. So always just half that joint until you're paring off just a little bit from the sides. Now then, when you've got a great big knot in the way, you're probably going to need a saw. That chipping technique won't work because the grain fibres will twist it in all different directions. So cut as close as you can to the lines and then pare off with the chisel from there. So there we go, one half lap joint. Okay, you can see why normally when you're doing these for something pretty, you wouldn't use the rounded corners because it leaves gaps like this. That's actually a nice gap, but because it's rounded, it just looks a bit ugly. Check all the time that everything's running square. So pop that in there. Yeah, that's definitely good enough for me. Right, okay, so another 3 to do to get this first frame sorted out. Now, worth pointing out at this point, I haven't used a pencil yet. You see that? I've all done it all with the knife markings. It makes it definitive, it makes it nice and accurate. So the only thing I'm going to use the pencil for is to now mark this joint so it doesn't get confused, because obviously all these joints are going to be very, very similar. But to make sure it's a specific thing, let's mark that joint off. So let's just mark that off as joint A. And because they're both written in that direction, I know that them two are going to match up as well in that direction. I aren't going to try and put the joint together like that. Well, there we go. So one frame made. Well, actually I've cheated. We've got 3 frames made. So we have the second one that's going to sit out front there with one bench top going across that way. And then we've got a smaller one that's going to sit out here with the bench top that goes across in the corner. So now we've got the task of connecting this to that and the little one to there, and all the rest in between, to actually create some boxes. Now again, this isn't the traditional way of doing it. Usually if you make a box, you would have a post and then some beams running in with just mortise and tenons. I didn't have any post material, I had this, so this is what I'm using. But I am now going to use a mortise and tenon to join this section to this section. Just one beam that goes right the way through that half lap joint, probably making it even stronger. And then that will hold everything out and in place, ready for sides and lid to be added on in a bit. So firstly, I just want two 12-inch lengths for the thin end. That's going to be attached onto that corner like that. So first of all, I'm going to mark that off again. This time I'm going to use numbers, because why not? So I now need to cut the shoulder off here so that we have the tenon or tongue, if you want to remember it that way, and then I'll cut in the mortise or mouth to go in there, tongue in mouth. So I'm going to use the real life thickness of this wood, lining up the back, making a nick. Now I know exactly how deep that needs to be for a full through tenon. So finishing off marking all the way around. Anybody see the glaring mistake that I've made? Yes, that number's going to get chopped off, isn't it? So we need to put the number 1 there, because that's all going to be disappeared, just leaving the tenon inside that area. Now, top tip for when you're cutting out a tenon. Do it the same width as one of your chisels. That way cutting out the mortise later on will be a lot easier, because you just need one depth of the chisel going in and the tenon will fit perfectly. So here's another marking tool that we're going to use. This time this has an adjustable 2 pins that we set to the exact width of your chisel. And I've also marked off on here a little arrow to say this is my face side. So I know I'm always butting up like that. Do the same on the other joint. So whether this is central or not doesn't matter, it all matches up side to side. So we can see, just taking little bits off at a time, we end up with this kind of V-shaped cut inside. All we need to then do is turn the chisel at each point and then just start going straight down like this to clean up the very edges. Right, so one thing with working with pine like this is it's very easy to get a little crack. So as you're working through, because we're fairly close to the edge, it's developed a crack in here. You see that? If I push that with my thumb, we can see that that's coming open. Dead easy to fix. Just pop some super glue down that hole. Kind of peel it in and out. It just gets the super glue to run through the crack a little bit better. And either leave that to set, or if you've got some accelerator, give it a squirt. That's that fixed. Now I always like to mark off the back side as well, just to make sure that I'm not going to just blow out the back and have chippings come off everywhere. So exactly the same technique again. And then especially because this beam is running at a different grain orientation to this beam, it means I kind of want to come in from this side anyway to chip it in a different way. So I want to cut 90 degrees to those grains. If I go that way, then that crack we experienced earlier is far more likely to split all the way through and we'll lose this end.
So just being very careful with this bit.
And there we go, we're all the way through. Test fit, that goes in there quite nicely. It's flush against this edge, it's flush against the top. So now we've just got to do loads more. So obviously there's 4 corners at this end, there's going to be 4 corners at the other end I need to do, and then we'll talk about the middle section in a minute. So we can see we've finally done all the mortise and tenons on that small end, and as we move across we can see what's happened over here. So we've done all the mortise and tenons at the very end. It's this middle section here, so obviously this is lying on its side, where we have mortise and tenons at the top and the bottom, but we need to join this middle section. Now what's going to happen there is we're just going to cut out a section to slot over the top of this. Again, it's going to be the same at the top and at the bottom as well. Bottom. So to attach this all together, we need to have these bits attached to here as the middle section, and then we can attach all the base bits and then all the top bits and glue them all in. So after the glue has set, it looks like this. So I've just placed these on. They're not attached or hinged or anything yet, but just to show exactly what it's going to look like. So that's where they're going to go. The next thing I'm going to do is face the seeable edges. The reason I want to do that next is so that this section, I know exactly where to position left to right so that it covers that front face properly. So this is where my pallet wood's going to come from, is this pallet. Now then, normally I find that these blocks that hold it all together are chunks of wood which are beautifully split with an axe, but this is kind of compressed fibres, so I'm not convinced the axe is going to work, but hey, I'm going to give it a go just to see. If that doesn't work, then we'll use an old saw to chop through. Now usually we can get all the way around the edges like this, and it's that middle one that can cause us the issues. If we've removed the others, what I like to do is generally try and twist the two sections apart circularly, so it just snaps that middle bit, which I think, because it's this compressed stuff, that might happen quite easily. What a lovely pile of wood. Now, just caught that the camera wasn't recorded, so let's do this bit again for your sake. Along here, we're going to be attaching these boards onto this edge, but you can see on this section there's nothing for that to attach to. On this side, it's going to be absolutely fine, but on there, we've got something missing. So I just need to stick a beam in to here, flush with the level of this section. So I'm just marking off here. I've cut a diagonal cut that fits that length, and then I'm just going to chip that away with the chisel. Right, literally just nailing these sections on. Now, like I said, this is where your design could change. You might not like pallet wood. You might be horrified that that piece is fractionally thicker than that piece. Me, I don't mind it, it's part of the look. You could use tongue and groove, some shiplap, beautifully smooth plywood with a nice face on there. You could use anything you want, really. Is this too rough? Yeah, it is, yeah. I wouldn't want Mrs. KBC to start lathering her tights. I'll go over it with some sandpaper just to make sure it's finished, but the different colours, textures, this blue paint splashing that's on, it's going to fit perfectly where it's going. So along with a light sanding, I'm also just going to give this pallet wood just one coat of Danish oil, not so much as a protectant, but really just to bring the colours out. It warms things up a little bit, makes those colours stand out and a little bit more homely. Right, we're nearly there. Last couple of things to do. I have put hinges onto the tops. Very, very simple. Just standard interior door hinges. Dead easy to do. So that's on that and that. The next thing for me is to create a surround for where this little umbrella section's going to go. So I've cut out this matching piece of wood and now just need to cut the hole out of there, and then I'm just going to stick this down onto the frame to supply the hole, and then I'm going to go around the edges of all these pieces so that they've got the same round edge as that. So I'm going to have a square edge on the back, but the leading edge of this, the leading edge of this, the interior section of this hole will all then have this same round over that we've got on there. So a little bit of cutting and sticking and then a bit of noise and dust. So really the last few touches are to just put a backing board so everything doesn't fall out the back of it, and in here I've done the trusty half flap joint again, just to put these braces across, not for the lid because that's strong enough to just span the joint itself anyway, but just so that I can use some more of this thin plywood to create dividing sheets down there, so that the umbrellas and things, the canes that are going to fit inside there, don't fall their way through into other areas. And then if you want to, you can section off obviously then interiors of areas with more of this stuff and braces. That would be entirely up to you and what your design wants to look like. And there we go. One hole tidy. Fit anything you like in here: shoes, coats, gloves, scarves. Well, maybe not coats. Me, I like hats there, just ready to use. Well, if you like this project, or if you like doing some of the joints that are in this project, check out this Tuesday tips playlist. If you want a few weekend projects, like this one could be, check out this weekend projects playlist just over here. Until next time, God bless. See you soon.